The year was 1237. The land lay under a shroud of mist, fields left barren by war and poor harvest. A lone rider made his way along the mud-choked road, his cloak torn, his armor dented with the scars of many campaigns. His name was Sir Aldric, 30 years of age, though his face bore lines carved by grief and steel. 10 winters had passed since he first marched east with his lord, chasing glory, blood, and faith. Now he returned to his village, not to the roaring welcome of comrades but to silence broken only by crows. His family was gone. His parents had perished of fever years before, his brothers slain in battle. The old manor was but a hollow ruin, its roof collapsed, moss and rot claiming what once stood proud. By custom and bargain, he had been promised a bride upon his return. She was no noble lady, but a peasant girl, young, unspoiled, and strong of limb, chosen by the priest and village elders to bind warrior and soil together. Her name was Elswyth. Barely 16, she had tilled the earth all her short life, her hands roughened by toil, her eyes wide with a mixture of fear and wonder. When Aldric first laid eyes on her, she lowered her gaze, clutching her woolen shawl about her shoulders. She looked more like a frightened doe than a bride. He felt no joy, only the weight of duty pressing upon him heavier than the sword at his side. That night, as the villagers feasted in their crude way to honor the union, the old priest muttered blessings in Latin, his voice quivering as though the words themselves trembled in the air. A cold wind swept through the hall, extinguishing 2 torches at once. The old women crossed themselves, whispering of ill omens. Elswyth's hand trembled in Aldric's, yet she forced a small smile as though to hide her dread. He, seasoned by war, sensed something darker than mere nerves. It was as if shadows themselves leaned closer, eager to listen, eager to taste. And so the warrior and the peasant girl were bound, under custom, under God, and under a sky heavy with foreboding. But not all unions are blessed. Their chamber was a modest room in what had once been the steward's house. The thatch above their heads leaked where the rain found cracks, and the hearth gave off little warmth. Aldric sat on the edge of the straw bed, unbuckling his armor piece by piece, the clinking echoing in the small space like the toll of distant bells. Elswyth kept to the corner, her shawl still wrapped tightly about her shoulders. She was not ignorant of what marriage meant, but she was young, and the man before her seemed more spectre than husband. His scars, his hollow eyes, the smell of steel and dried blood clinging to him as if he carried the battlefield home. "I am not a cruel man," Aldric said, his voice deep yet weary. "Fear not. What is done tonight is done by God's will, not by hunger of flesh." She glanced at him, then lowered her eyes again. Outside, the wind whistled through the trees, carrying with it a low moan. It might have been the voice of the forest or something older. When they lay side by side, there was little tenderness, only a quiet acceptance of what must be. Yet even in that silence, Elswyth felt something stir, not within herself, but around them. The shadows on the wall shifted though the fire was steady. She clutched at the wooden cross hanging from her neck, whispering a prayer her mother had taught her. Aldric, half dreaming, heard her murmurs. He reached out, resting his calloused hand over hers. "The world is cruel enough, wife. Do not pray for mercy, pray for strength." But as sleep claimed them both, the sound of scratching came from the rafters above. Not rat nor weasel, it was too deliberate, too steady. Elswyth opened her eyes in the dark and thought she saw, just for a breath, a pale face peering through the gaps of the thatch. Eyes wide, unblinking, watching. She shut her eyes tight, not daring to speak. The first light of dawn crept weakly through the cracks of the shutters, painting the room in pale gray. Elswyth rose before Aldric, her body sore, her mind troubled by the night. She dared to glance at the rafters where she thought she had seen the face, but there was nothing, only straw, cobweb, and damp wood. She stepped outside into the chill morning air. The village stirred slowly, smoke rising from crooked chimneys, the sound of hens clucking, and dogs barking at shadows. Yet something felt wrong. The villagers avoided her eyes. Even the children, curious by nature, did not run to glimpse the warrior's bride. When Aldric emerged, dressed in worn wool and leather, he noticed it as well. The greetings were curt, muttered, as though the villagers feared to speak too loudly. The blacksmith crossed himself when Aldric passed, though no priest had called for prayer. Elswyth busied herself with the women, learning to grind grain and fetch water, but all the while she heard whispers at the edge of hearing. The old women in their dark kerchiefs muttered to one another, words like curse, omen, and blood price. That evening, as the couple sat before the hearth, Aldric sharpening his sword more from habit than need, Elswyth gathered the courage to speak. "Husband," she began softly, "why do they look at us so?" Aldric paused, the whetstone in his hand. His face was unreadable. "Because I returned when many did not. Men who walk too long in war are said to carry death with them, even into peace. Perhaps they think me marked." Elswyth shivered. She wanted to tell him of the face in the rafters, of the scratching that still echoed in her head, but the words stuck in her throat. Instead, she only nodded, staring into the flames. That night, the scratching returned. Louder, closer. This time Aldric heard it too. He rose, sword in hand, and thrust it upward through the thatch. Silence followed, then the faint sound of something scuttling away across the roof. He lowered the blade, eyes narrowed. "Rats," he muttered. But Elswyth saw in his expression that he did not believe it. Days passed, but the unease grew. The village seemed to hold its breath, and even the forest felt alive in a way that pressed against the senses. Aldric patrolled the perimeter, sword always within reach. Yet even his battle-hardened eyes found the woods beyond the village unnerving. The trees twisted in shapes that seemed almost deliberate, their branches like gnarled fingers pointing at the settlement. One evening, Elswyth went to fetch water from the stream that wound through the outskirts of the forest. She moved slowly, carrying the wooden pail with trembling hands. The wind shifted, carrying whispers that were not human. Soft syllables in a tongue that grazed her mind and left a hollow chill. She froze, spotting a figure standing among the trees. Tall, thin, with a face half hidden by shadows, it did not move, yet it felt as though it watched her every breath. Her heart pounded. She thought of running, but her feet were rooted to the mud. Then the figure stepped back, disappearing between the trunks, leaving only a lingering smell of earth and decay. When she returned, she told Aldric, who frowned, tightening his grip on the pail. "The land remembers, wife," he said, voice low. "This forest, it keeps secrets. Men die here, women vanish, and the old tales speak of spirits that collect grief." Elswyth shivered, wrapping her shawl around her tighter. That night, when the wind moaned through the village, she heard scratching again, this time not above, but against the walls. Aldric inspected every corner, but the mud brick held firm, and the straw floor gave no clue. He finally knelt beside her, voice harsh but steady. "Do not let them see your fear. Fear feeds them, whatever they are. They wait in the dark for those who tremble." Elswyth tried to sleep, but the shadows seemed to crawl along the walls. The faint sound of whispered voices rose and fell, like children laughing somewhere just out of sight, yet twisted, cruel, and hollow. By dawn, both were exhausted. Outside, the forest appeared to lean closer, as if pressing against the village to see what lived within. And in that moment, a single thought struck Aldric, cold as the steel at his belt. Whatever haunted this place, it did not sleep. The village was quiet that morning, too quiet. Even the crows, usually harbingers of misfortune, were absent, and the air felt thick, as though the earth itself were holding its breath. Aldric sensed it first, the sudden weight on his chest, a chill that cut through his armor. Elswyth had gone to the well to fetch water, and he saw her pause mid-step, hand frozen on the rope. Her eyes were wide, staring past him, into the empty street. "Do you see it?" she whispered. Aldric followed her gaze. There, in the mud before the well, a dark stain shaped like a handprint glistened, though no one had passed there since dawn. Its edges twisted unnaturally, clawed almost, and the center pulsed, like a heart beneath the earth. He knelt, pressing a finger near the edge. The stain recoiled as if alive, retreating before contact, then settling again in its grotesque shape. Aldric rose slowly, unease prickling along his spine. "This village," he muttered, "has secrets deeper than we know." The whispers started again that evening, slithering into the corners of the room. Elswyth shivered as Aldric sat by the hearth, sword across his lap. "They mark you," he said finally, voice low. "Whatever watched you in the forest, it has found you, and not just you." Elswyth's hands clenched the edge of the bed. "Why me?" she asked. Her voice was tiny, fragile, yet threaded with something Aldric did not recognize. Fear that was more than fear. It was recognition, as if she knew, deep in her marrow, that she carried a secret meant to draw darkness. Aldric's mind raced. He remembered the old wives' tales whispered to soldiers at the edge of war. A bride too young, a union forced by custom, the blood of the earth mingled with hers. It was said to awaken what lurked in the woods. He rose, going to the window. Shadows shifted in the trees, and he thought he glimpsed pale figures moving just beyond the treeline. One stopped, staring directly at their window. The eyes were black holes in a face too thin for life, and Aldric's grip tightened on the sill until his knuckles whitened. Elswyth gasped. "It knows," she said. "It knows what we are." And in the dark, the scratching returned. Not random, not rat or bird, deliberate, patient, waiting. The next night, the wind howled like a wounded beast, rattling the shutters and tossing shadows across the walls. Aldric lay awake, listening as the scratching returned. Not from the rafters this time, but from beneath the floor. Elswyth stirred beside him, eyes wide in the dim firelight. "It comes from below," she whispered. "The old wells, the earth, it remembers." Aldric rose, sword in hand, and knelt beside the floorboards. The scratches were steady now, deliberate, as if something clawed to rise. He tore one board loose. The dark beneath smelled of rot and wet earth. Something moved, fast, and vanished before he could strike. Elswyth pressed her hand to his arm. "It wants me," she said, voice trembling. "It's drawn to my blood." Aldric froze. "Your blood?" She nodded. I am not like other girls. My mother told me things before she died. Things I could not understand. She said our family carries the mark of the old soil. That the forest, the earth, and the shadows, they listen to us." He clenched his jaw, anger and fear mingling. "Why didn't you tell me?" "I didn't understand," she cried. "I thought it was just a tale to frighten me. But now I see it is real, and it's coming." Outside, the trees groaned as if in response, and a shadow detached itself from the forest. Tall, thin, its movements jerky and unnatural. It advanced toward the village with patience only the unearthly possess. Aldric held her close. "Then we will face it together," he said, though his voice lacked conviction. "Whatever this is, it will not take you without paying the price." In the corner, the fire flickered. In the dark, shapes began to move, whispering her name. The scratching beneath the floor grew louder, and the shadow beyond the window stopped, its empty eyes fixed upon them. Elswyth shivered. "It knows we are married," she said. "That makes it stronger, more patient." And Aldric understood, cold as steel and fear, that the forest did not merely haunt the village. It had waited for this union, for the merging of blood and soil, and now nothing would be the same. Night fell with unnatural swiftness, swallowing the village in darkness so thick it seemed to press against the skin. Aldric and Elswyth huddled by the hearth, the fire barely holding the shadows at bay. The scratching had stopped, replaced by something worse. A low, dragging sound, like claws scraping stone, moving steadily around their home. Aldric drew his sword, its blade catching the faint light. "Stay close," he commanded. "Whatever it is, it walks the earth like a man, but it is not man." Elswyth's hands trembled, but she stood, gripping a wooden staff from the corner of the room, the only weapon she could manage. Her young face was pale, her lips pressed tight, yet in her eyes was a fire Aldric had never seen before. Recognition and the stubborn refusal to yield. Then the door shuddered. Not the wind. Something heavy leaned against it, testing it, patient, deliberate. The dragging sound stopped. Silence fell, broken only by the villagers' distant barking dogs and the rustle of the forest. And then a voice whispered, not in words, not in language, but in thought, slithering into their minds. "Elswyth." It hissed, sweet and terrible at once. "Child of the soil, bride of war, come to me." Her body froze. Aldric's blood ran cold. He swung the door open, sword raised, but there was nothing. Only the wind, the trees, and the sense that something stood just beyond the threshold, unseen. Elswyth's voice was barely audible. "It knows me," she said. "It knows my name. It knows what we are." Suddenly, the shadows from the corners of the room shifted violently, coalescing into forms that were almost human. Faces pressed from the darkness. Hollow eyes, mouths twisted in silent screams. They reached for her, stretching, grasping, their limbs long and spindly, moving with impossible grace. Aldric swung his sword, cutting through nothing but air and shadow. He felt the cold brush of unseen fingers against his arm, felt the weight of eyes from all directions, pressing down, searching, testing. Elswyth stepped forward, chanting words she did not know she remembered. Her mother's voice, long dead, echoed through her mind, guiding her. "The blood of the soil can bind them, can drive them back, if you call it true." A flare of light erupted from her palms, sudden and fierce, burning through the shadows. The dark forms shrieked and recoiled, retreating toward the corners and the forest beyond. The door slammed shut behind them with a deafening crash. Aldric grabbed her, heart hammering. What did you do?" She swallowed, eyes wide with both awe and fear. "I called it, I don't know, I called the blood. They obey only the blood of my line." And outside, the forest side, patient, waiting. Whatever had come for them tonight had been repelled. But it had not left. Not truly. It would return. Morning came slowly, gray and heavy. Aldric and Elswyth left their home cautiously, the air still thick with the scent of damp earth and smoke. The village seemed changed. Windows shuttered, doors bolted, and even the children stayed hidden in corners, whispering in hushed tones. The villagers watched them as they passed. Eyes narrowed, lips tight. Not curiosity, but suspicion. Aldric noticed the glances and felt a surge of anger. "Do they think I am weak?" he muttered. "Do they not see what came for us last night?" A black-haired woman, the midwife of the village, stepped out from behind a cart. Her face was lined, eyes sharp and knowing. "You've disturbed things that should have slept," she said, voice low and urgent. "The forest watches, and it watches you, child of the soil." Elswyth flinched. I did not mean to." "No," the woman interrupted, shaking her head. "You did not mean, but it knows, and others know too. Not all who dwell here are simple peasants. Some remember the old ways, and some Some would see your blood used for their own purposes. Aldric's hand dropped to his sword. Explain, he demanded. The midwife's eyes darted toward the forest. Your line, girl. It carries the mark. The old pacts, old blood rights, the things the priests try to bury. They are not gone. They wait in the dark. And when a bride of war comes to the village, they stir again. Elswyth shivered, gripping Aldric's arm. Pacts? Blood rights? What does that mean? The midwife's gaze hardened. It means you are not safe. Not in your own home. Not even beside your husband. The blood of your line calls to the shadows. And there are those who would answer. From the edge of the village, the forest seemed to lean closer, as if listening. The wind whispered her name again, carrying something almost human, almost patient, almost cruel. Aldric pulled her closer. Then we leave at once, he said. We find what this is and we end it. No one will touch you. Not the shadows, not the forest, not these villagers. Elswyth nodded, fear mingled with determination. But there are things I have never told you, she admitted. Things I cannot yet speak aloud. Secrets my mother made me promise. If we leave, I may have to break them. Aldric's eyes hardened. Then we face them together. Whatever waits in the dark, it will not have you alone. And in the silent pause, the forest exhaled. A low, deep sigh that carried with it the promise of storms, of night, and of horrors yet to come. Aldric led them out of the village before dawn. The sky a slate-gray promise of storm. The forest loomed ahead, thick with black trunks and tangled underbrush, and a fog clung to the ground like a living thing. Every step they took seemed to draw the shadows closer, twisting the trees into shapes that whispered their names. Elswyth shivered, clutching Aldric's arm. It is waiting, she said. Her voice trembled, but there was steel in her tone too. I can feel it. The forest hungers for me. He tightened his grip on his sword. Then we must not let it touch you. Keep close and do not falter. The deeper they went, the quieter the world became. Birds no longer sang. Only the rustle of leaves and the distant drip of water broke the oppressive silence. Then came the whispers, soft, sibilant, curling through the mist. Words, half heard, half imagined. Child, blood, bride. Suddenly, the fog thickened, and shapes began to move within it. Pale, emaciated figures with hollow eyes and spindly limbs stepped onto the path. They did not walk but glided, their movements jerky and unnatural. Aldric raised his sword, swinging, but it passed through one as if it were smoke. They are spirits of the old soil, Elswyth whispered, fear tightening her chest. My mother spoke of them. They guard the blood of our line. They test, they torment, they hunger. One figure lunged toward her. She raised her hands instinctively, and a pulse of golden light erupted from her palms, scattering the shadows. The figures recoiled, screeching, their forms dissolving into the mist. Aldric grabbed her arm. You have power, he said, voice tight. But it is dangerous. Can you control it? I do not know, she admitted. I never have, not fully. And the more they come, the stronger they grow. The forest feeds on fear and blood. Mine is a beacon to them. A distant howl echoed through the trees. A sound too low, too deep, to be any animal he had ever known. It was deliberate, patient, and filled with malice. As they pressed deeper into the forest, the fog swirled around them, carrying the faint scent of rot and iron. Every step seemed heavier than the last, as if the soil itself resisted their passage. And Aldric realized with a cold certainty, this was not just a forest. It was a living prison, ancient, cruel, and patient. Behind them, the path vanished. Ahead, only darkness waited. The fog deepened until it was almost solid, pressing against their skin and muffling all sound. Aldric and Elswyth moved cautiously, the forest around them seeming to bend and sway, though no wind touched them. Every tree became a watchful sentinel, every shadow a hidden mouth. Then it came. A figure stepped from the mist, taller than any man, its body thin and elongated, limbs like bent branches. Its face was a void, black as a starless night, yet with eyes that glowed faintly red, burning with hunger. It moved silently, gliding over roots and moss, yet every step seemed to shake the earth beneath them. Elswyth froze. It knows me, she whispered, voice trembling. It has waited for me all my life. The creature tilted its head, as if amused by her fear. A whisper slithered directly into her mind. Child of the soil, come to me, surrender. Aldric raised his sword. Stay behind me, he shouted, voice firm but trembling. He struck at the creature, the blade slicing through air and shadow. It recoiled with a shriek, a sound that seemed to twist the trees around them. Elswyth stepped forward, hands trembling, eyes wide. Her mother's voice echoed in her memory. Blood of the line, call it true. With a sudden motion, she thrust her hands toward the hollow one. Light erupted. Not weak, not flickering, but bright, golden, burning with the intensity of life itself. The creature screamed, a sound that pierced Aldric's ears and shook the fog like a storm. It reeled, clutching its face, shadow melting and twisting back into the mist. But it was not defeated. It circled them, moving faster than thought, slipping through the trees like smoke. It will not leave, Aldric said grimly. It feeds on your fear. The stronger it grows, the weaker we become. Elswyth nodded, fear and determination clashing in her gaze. Then I must face it, she said. I must call it, or it will never stop. Aldric gripped her shoulder. I am with you, he said. Whatever comes, whatever waits in the dark, we face it together. You are not alone. The hollow one paused, hovering like a nightmare carved from smoke. Its eyes locked on her. Then it hissed, low and menacing, and began to advance. And in that moment, Aldric realized the truth. This forest did not just guard secrets. It demanded blood, it demanded fear, and it demanded her. The forest seemed to hold its breath as the hollow one glided closer, its red eyes fixed on Elswyth. Every instinct screamed for Aldric to strike, yet he knew steel alone could not defeat this thing. It was born of shadow, of hunger, and of the blood that coursed through his young wife's veins. Elswyth trembled but lifted her hands. Golden light swirled around her, bright and fierce, illuminating the trees in harsh, unnatural clarity. The hollow one recoiled, a high, keening wail echoing through the fog. Call it, Aldric shouted, gripping his sword, muscles tense. Call it true. She closed her eyes, drawing on something older than the village, older than the forest. Her mother's words burned in her mind. Blood of the line. You are the beacon. Call it true. A pulse of light shot from her palms, and the hollow one shrieked again, stumbling back. The ground beneath it cracked, black mist rising like smoke from a fire. Aldric swung his sword, slicing through a tendril of shadow that lashed toward him. It hissed like metal on stone, recoiling, then reformed, more monstrous than before. Elswyth's voice rose in chant, unintelligible yet potent. The trees groaned, bending, twisting, and the very air hummed with power. The hollow one shrieked, clawing at the light, yet it could not touch her. You can do this, Aldric shouted. Hold it back. She bit her lip, sweat streaking her pale face. Another pulse, another scream from the creature, and it reeled backward, disappearing momentarily into the fog. The light dimmed, leaving the forest strangely still, almost reverent. But Aldric knew better. It's wounded, not gone, he said. It will return. Elswyth sank to her knees, trembling, exhausted. I didn't know I had so much power, she whispered. And yet, it feels like it wants more, like it hungers for it. Aldric knelt beside her, placing a hand over hers. Power is nothing without control, he said, voice soft. And fear is nothing without courage. You faced both tonight. That is why it did not take you. From the edge of the fog, the Hollow One watched. Silent, patient, waiting. His hunger had not been sated. The forest groaned again, reminding them that this was only the beginning. Elswyth looked up at Aldric. If it comes back, I don't know if I can hold it again. He lifted her chin, meeting her gaze. Then I will stand with you, whatever it takes. You are not alone. And beyond the trees, the shadows stirred, whispering promises of blood, darkness, and secrets yet untold. The dawn that followed their battle was uneasy. The forest was silent now, yet every shadow seemed alive, lingering with memory and menace. Aldric and Elswyth returned to the village, moving cautiously, their hearts still racing from the night's horrors. The villagers watched from behind shuttered windows and doorways. Whispers followed them through the streets. The bride of blood, the warrior who returns, the forest will claim them. The midwife met them at the edge of the village, her eyes sharp. You survived, she said, voice tinged with awe and fear. But not without cost. The Hollow One does not forget, and neither do the old pacts. Some among you have kept knowledge hidden, knowledge that could save you or doom you. Elswyth glanced at Aldric. What knowledge? She asked, voice low. The villagers, the midwife explained, have always honored the old ways in secret. Not all are faithful to the church alone. Some still serve the forest, the soil, the shadows. They know the rites of blood, the old prayers, the bargains struck long ago. Your family's line, your mother's line, was marked to guard against it, to bind it. But many sought to exploit it instead. Aldric's jaw tightened. Then some of these people would use her power against her? The midwife nodded grimly. Or against the forest itself. The Hollow One hungers for blood, but it also listens. It knows fear, obedience, and betrayal. Beware those who speak softly. They may guide or betray. Elswyth pressed her hands to her temples. I never knew. I never understood. My mother said only that we were marked. I thought it was a story to scare children, but it was real. And now, it is awake. Aldric wrapped an arm around her, shielding her from the eyes of the villagers. Then we keep moving. We cannot rely on them. Only each other. Only our strength. Whatever lies ahead, we face it together. The midwife's gaze lingered on Elswyth. Remember this, blood calls to blood. The forest, the Hollow One. They obey the call, but they respect the control. Your line can bind them, but only if you do not falter. Only if your courage is stronger than your fear. As they prepared to leave the village once more, a caw of a lone crow pierced the morning mist. Aldric and Elswyth exchanged a glance. Foreboding, heavy with unspoken truths. The forest awaited, and in the shadows, old eyes watched, old hands remembered, and the hunger for blood whispered in patience. Night fell quickly as Aldric and Elswyth made their way back into the forest, moving carefully along a narrow, overgrown path. The air was damp, heavy with decay, and the fog clung like a living shroud. Every tree seemed to bend toward them, their gnarled branches twisting as if to block their passage. Elswyth's hands shook, not from cold, but from the weight of what she had just learned. Aldric, there's more, she said quietly. My mother. She did not just warn me. She left me a legacy, a burden, a secret. I am not only the bloodline of the soil. I am bound to it, to the forest, to what waits in the dark. Aldric's eyes narrowed. Bound how? Speak plainly. She swallowed, voice trembling. "The Hollow One, and others like it, they are drawn to me, because of my blood, because of what my family promised generations ago. My mother, she made me promise never to call it fully, never to test it alone. But now," her eyes flickered to the shadows around them, "now it is awake, and I must call it or we will not survive." The forest groaned, a deep, low sound that seemed almost like laughter. From the mist, pale shapes emerged, humanoid yet elongated, grotesque. The Hollow One had returned, larger, hungrier, more deliberate. His eyes glowed like embers, scanning, calculating. Aldric drew his sword and stepped in front of her. "Then we call it together. You and I. You guide the power, I will protect you. Whatever it takes." Elswyth nodded. She felt the pulse of the old blood within her, the strength of her mother, her ancestors, the very soil of the forest itself. Light flared from her palms, bathing the twisted trees in golden fire. The Hollow One recoiled, hissing, but did not retreat entirely. "You cannot fight it alone," Aldric said, voice tight. "Lean on me." He slashed at the tendrils of shadow that lashed toward them, cutting, striking, protecting her. Together, they became a single force, her light, his steel. The Hollow One shrieked, claws digging into the earth, black mist swirling, but it could not claim her. Not yet. Elswyth realized with sudden clarity. The blood of her line was both a weapon and a trap. If she faltered, even for a moment, it would consume her. But as long as she trusted Aldric, as long as they stood together, there was hope, even against something older than men or memory. The Hollow One withdrew, melting back into the fog, leaving only a whisper. Soon, Elswyth sank to her knees, exhausted, the golden light fading. Aldric knelt beside her, gripping her shoulder. "We survived," he said. "But this is only the beginning." She nodded, understanding for the first time the full weight of her lineage. The forest was alive. The Hollow One was patient. And their bond, their union by custom, by blood, by courage, was the only thing standing between them and the darkness that waited in the shadows. The forest thickened as night fell, shadows stretching and twisting unnaturally around Aldric and Elswyth. Every step they took seemed to echo, though no sound followed. The Hollow One had not returned fully, but its presence pressed down on them like iron chains, patient and inevitable. "I feel it watching us," Elswyth whispered, clutching Aldric's arm. "Every tree, every root. It's alive, and it knows our fear." Aldric gritted his teeth. "Then we do not falter. Whatever it throws at us, we face it. Together." As they pressed forward, the fog parted slightly, revealing figures standing silently among the trees, villagers, or perhaps something older, corrupted by fear and old pacts. Their eyes were dark, faces blank, and hands reaching. Aldric's heart sank. Some had betrayed them. Some had aligned with the forest's hunger. "They test us," Elswyth said. "They want to see if we break. If we falter, the Hollow One will strike fully. If we hold, perhaps we survive." The figures moved closer, slow and deliberate, their murmurs like distant thunder. Blood, bride, warrior. Elswyth drew on her lineage, her hands glowing with the golden light of her ancestors. Aldric swung his sword at the nearest shadow, cutting through limbs that should not have been solid. The villagers, whether alive, bewitched, or spirit, lunged, forcing them to fight in perfect unison. The Hollow One emerged then, fully visible. A towering shadow, elongated, sinewy, with eyes like coals burning in the void. Its claws tore the earth, and its scream bent the fog around them. Elswyth chanted, voice rising above the chaos, weaving her bloodline's power into the forest itself. Golden light collided with black shadow. Aldric struck at every tendril, protecting her, cutting through corruption, facing both human and spirit. One figure broke through their defense, a villager whose eyes gleamed with malice and lunged at Elswyth. Aldric intercepted, steel clashing, but a part of him realized the truth. The forest's hunger had allies, even among those they trusted. Elswyth's light flared suddenly, brighter than ever, burning the corruption around them. The Hollow One shrieked, retreating into the mist, but its promise lingered. Soon, exhausted and bloodied, they stood amid the wreckage of trees and shadow. Aldric held her tightly. "We survived," he said. "But this forest, these people, this hunger, it is not finished." Elswyth nodded, voice soft but resolute. "Then we prepare. We must face it again. And next time we end it." The forest loomed around them, patient, alive, waiting. And somewhere in the mist, the Hollow One's red eyes glimmered, silent, inevitable, hungry. The forest was silent now, but the silence was thick, alive with menace. Aldric and Elswyth stood at the edge of a clearing, where the fog swirled like a living thing. At its center, the Hollow One waited, taller and darker than any shadow they had faced, eyes burning like embers, claws sinking into the earth as if drawing strength from the soil itself. Elswyth's hands glowed with golden light, trembling yet steady. "This is it," she whispered. "The blood of my line. It must bind it, or it will consume everything we love." Aldric tightened his grip on his sword. "And I will stand with you. No step back, no fear, only forward." The Hollow One lunged, swift as thought, its scream ripping the fog like a blade. Shadows stretched toward them, twisting, writhing, seeking to drag them into the soil itself. Elswyth began her chant, voice rising in power and clarity, calling on the blood of her ancestors. Golden light erupted from her palms, flowing into the ground, rising like molten fire, illuminating the trees and burning through the shadowy forms that attacked them. The Hollow One screamed, clawing at the light, but it could not withstand the combined force of lineage and courage. Aldric fought beside her, swinging his sword through the tendrils of darkness, striking at corrupted villagers and shadows alike. Every blow was precise, every motion protecting Elswyth as she poured herself into the Bloodline's power. The forest trembled, as if alive, groaning and shifting. The Hollow One shrieked, the sound bending the mist into violent spirals. But then light, a pulse from Elswyth's hands, surged into the soil, into the roots, into the very heart of the forest. The shadow howled, twisting, elongating, then finally shattered, scattering into fragments of smoke and ash that the wind carried away. Silence followed. The fog thinned. The forest exhaled, still alive, but no longer hostile. Aldric lowered his sword, breathing heavily, and turned to Elswyth, whose golden glow had faded, leaving her pale and trembling, yet alive. "You did it," he whispered, voice rough with awe. "You held it. You ended it." Elswyth sank to her knees, tears mingling with sweat and dirt. We survived. But the blood, the burden, it is mine forever. The forest will always remember me." Aldric knelt beside her, taking her hands in his. "Then we face it together. Your burden is ours. Whatever comes, we endure. You are not alone." From the edge of the clearing, the trees stood silent, patient, as if acknowledging their victory yet reminding them that life in the shadow of the forest was never without danger. The villagers would speak in whispers again, but the Hollow One, for now, was gone. The first rays of dawn broke through the mist, bathing the clearing in weak golden light. The air felt lighter, though the weight of the night lingered. Aldric and Elswyth stood together, bloodied, exhausted, but unbroken, bound not just by custom, but by courage, trust, and love forged in the darkness. And somewhere, deep in the forest, the soil whispered, remembering the bloodline, waiting, always waiting. The end.